Does the 2023 schedule lay a clear path for a 10-win Tar Heel season? We'll talk about it in just a second. Hey, bring it in. Let's huddle up.
You don't want none! You don't want none!
Ready, break! What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It's your boy Russ, and welcome to the Tar Heel Huddle, where we discuss all things Tar Heel football and basketball. And in this huddle, we're going to talk about the 2023 North Carolina football schedule. This is not going to be a preview in the sense that I'm going to be making my predictions right now. There will be a later video where I go over those predictions. This is simply going to be looking at the history between the Tar Heels and the programs that they're going to be facing, their head-to-head record, and maybe we'll look back on the 2022 season or the last time that the Heels faced these opponents. So, I don't know about you, but I think that this schedule really does set the Heels up for a really good season. And we'll talk about it in another podcast, but this may very well be the season where Mack Brown puts it all together, all the coaching experience that he's had, even in the 4 last seasons in Carolina, and all the recruits that he's been able to muster together. You know, I feel like there's a quiet confidence in Chapel Hill right now, and it could bode very well for the Tar Heels. So, without further ado, let's look at the 2023 Carolina football schedule. So, obviously, I think all of us are aware that the first football game is going to be pivotal in North Carolina's attempts to have a great season. Now, they've done this before where they've fallen short in their first game, but against these very same Gamecocks that they're going to be playing on September 2nd in Bank of America Stadium, it's going to be a huge football game. And the reason is because not only is it a battle of the Carolinas, it's also a battle of two schools that recruit very much the same recruiting ground. So these guys are constantly battling for the top talent in North Carolina and South Carolina. And lately, Clemson and South Carolina have done a great job of poaching the fertile football recruiting grounds of North Carolina. It's one of the best in the country, top 10 every year. So this is a real pivotal game in that Mack Brown has got to establish, or reestablish, if you will, the hope that he sold to all Carolina fans when he came back on 2018, 2019, and announced he was going to be Carolina's football coach again. It's a huge game in that Spencer Rattler's coming back. Juice Wells is coming back. It should be an electric atmosphere, North Carolina and South Carolina, because they obviously finished on a high and Carolina finished on a real bad low. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out. This is a great first football game, especially when you're trying to get your guys to be excited for the season. You know, if you play and no disrespect intended, if you play Florida A&M in the first game of the season, a lot of guys understand that that's kind of it's a warm-up game. It's not a game that you're really going to have to bring everything. But when you play the South Carolina Gamecocks, when you play an SEC opponent in the first game on a neutral ground that has all kinds of ramifications, whether it be in recruiting or just bragging rights in general, that's going to get everybody extremely hyped to work, so that they can start that season in the winners column. Now, we've seen once again in 2015 where Carolina, they lost the South Carolina game in the first game of the season in Bank of America Stadium, and then they had one of the best seasons that they've ever had. That 11-3 campaign that they had in one of Fedora's last seasons, or his last good season, if you will. But this is going to be a huge, huge football game. Now, after the South Carolina game, you follow that up with a in-state rival, whether it be little brother or not. You follow it up by bringing App State into Chapel Hill. Now, Chapel Hill is the only place that App State's ever beaten Carolina. If most of you remember, in 2019, they came into Chapel Hill and they had a bunch of their Mountaineer fans in the stands, and they were able to take one from Sam Howell and the Tar Heels. The all-time series record between the two schools is only 2-1, and it's kind of amazing that they've only played 3 times, but this is a heated battle. It always is, and maybe it's one of those games that, the Heels don't get up for as much as App State does. App State just loves the opportunity to play Carolina for whatever reason. They just love playing the Tar Heels. And who can forget, that game last year? 63-61. And Carolina moved to 2-0, and I remember just thinking to myself, this is terrible. Even though it was an exciting game, if you will, this is terrible. The Tar Heels gave up 61 points to the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Unacceptable. Just absolutely unacceptable. So, hopefully, they'll be able to get it together this year. Now, that's going to be, South Carolina, Appalachian State, and then you follow that up with a Big Ten opponent, which, once again, you have to be kind of excited about this year's schedule because he's going out and playing good opponents. You start out with the SEC, you start out with a good Appalachian State team in the Sun Belt, and then your final out-of-conference game until you obviously get later on down the road. But that first 3 games, you're going to play the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And P.J. Fleck has had that program really on the rise in the last 4 or 5 years, if you will. So you're bringing a solid Big Ten team down to Chapel Hill because they're doing a 1-1 series. Down to Chapel Hill, and there's a lot to be excited for that game. I mean, there's going to be plenty of people there, and it's an ACC Big Ten challenge, if you will, where the ACC gets an opportunity to show that they belong. And, Minnesota should be pretty good, and they do lose a lot. They lost their starting quarterback, and they also lost their all-time leading rusher. So they got a lot of shoes to fill, but you still got to feel good about having Minnesota come to Chapel Hill. That's an exciting football game. So then, to round out the first third of the season, Carolina will then go to Pittsburgh for their first ACC conference game. Now, this is not necessarily a game that I enjoy watching very much. It's usually a pretty decent football game, but I really don't like when Carolina goes to Pittsburgh because they play at Heinz Field or whatever it's called now in an NFL stadium, and it kind of takes away, to me at least, a little bit of the pageantry that you see in college football, what makes college football so great. It's usually a half-empty stadium, and Pittsburgh's fan base is not necessarily one that I would say comes out in support unless they're just doing something ridiculous. So this is actually a pretty good football game, for Carolina, in that it's a good opportunity for them to start 1-0 against a quality ACC opponent. Now, I'm not saying that Pittsburgh is not decent enough to be able to beat Carolina, but you really can't complain with how Pittsburgh fits into Carolina's schedule. They don't have to go up there in late October, early November, where it's 10 degrees and you can see everybody's breath coming out of their mouth. Should be pretty nice weather in late September in Pittsburgh for the Tar Heels' first ACC football game. Then they have their bye week, and they'll follow that up with another game that, quite honestly doesn't do anything for me except for it's probably a good opportunity for Carolina to hopefully, pick up a win in the win column. And that's that they host the Syracuse Orange. Now, the all-time series between Syracuse and Carolina is 3-3. The last time that the teams met was a 31-6 win in Chapel Hill by Carolina. And, this is kind of one of those games that, maybe it's a little aesthetically pleasing on the camera because you got the Syracuse orange and you got the Carolina blue. But aside from that, it's really not an exciting game for me. So, you take for that what you will. I'll definitely be watching the game, of course, and going hard, but who really gets excited about seeing the Hills play Carolina. Now, or the Hills play Syracuse, if you will. Now, after that, it gets exciting, at least in my point of view, because Miami, the mighty Miami Hurricanes, come to Chapel Hill. Now, UNC leads the all-time series 13-11. Now, that's obviously after Carolina had to vacate their 2 wins in 2008-2009 for, improper benefits violations. So, if you ask me, Carolina holds the series record 15-11, but we'll say 13-11. And not only that, Carolina's won the last 4. I mean, they've owned Miami, so it's always fun watching Carolina play Miami. Obviously, you think of the 2003 game when Connor Barth, hit that field goal. 2003, 2004, Connor Barth hit that field goal against Miami to beat them. I think they were a top 5 team at that time. That's probably the loudest that you'll ever hear at Kenan Stadium. So that's obviously exciting. That's what the excitement of the Miami game brings. But the problem is that you never know when that mighty, that old Miami is going to rear its head. Who knows what Mario Cristobal is going to be able to do in year 2. So this is definitely not a game that Carolina needs to sleep on. I'm sure that they won't because it is Miami. But this is always an exciting football game to watch. I actually went to the one in 2020 when Carolina won 26-24, and that place was stinking rocking. That's probably one of the best atmospheres at a Carolina football game I've ever been to. I was actually with my dad and my son. It was my son's first football game, and it probably couldn't have been a better football game for him because, like I said, that's actually the loudest that I've ever heard it while I was there, and I've attended my fair share of Carolina football games in Chapel Hill and King Memorial. So that's an exciting football game. Really looking forward to that one. After that, October 21st, Carolina plays at Virginia in Charlottesville. This is the South's oldest rivalry. Carolina leads the all-time series 63-55 with 4 ties. But, this is one of those ones that usually they end up playing each other really hard. And last year, Carolina won 31-28, which is honestly disgusting because Virginia was so bad. And, if you go back to 2022, one of the problems with Carolina is they had a lot of really close games. And at the beginning of the season, they won those football games. And at the end of the season, they lost those football games. And they ended up, you can see it throughout the scores of the schedule. They played according to their competition. 31-28 against Virginia is ridiculous, especially in Chapel Hill. So hopefully they can get some stuff fixed this year and get a W in Charlottesville. I don't see why that wouldn't be a strong possibility. After that, one of the teams that, once again, ruined our season last year, or was at least the beginning of the downfall. Carolina is 9-1, number 13 in the country. And Drake May is getting all types of Heisman talk. It's finally starting to come his way. And Carolina at home drops an egg. Just drops an absolute egg in Chapel Hill when they were up 17-0, And it's Georgia Tech. I don't know what Georgia Tech's deal is with Carolina, but they seem to kind of ruin everything every year, every other year. So Georgia Tech leads the all-time series 32-21. They have had 3 ties, and last year, like I said, they beat Carolina 21-17 when Carolina had everything to play for and Georgia Tech had nothing to play for. And I remember after that game just being like, this is what it is to be a Carolina football fan, And that's the stigma that we're trying to get rid of, is we're so much better than we show every year. And that has to do with not playing to your competition. You got to go ahead and handle business, man. And it seemed like that they were doing that in the beginning of the game, and then they just fell flat, And even as bad as they played, they still had an opportunity to win, obviously, because Josh Downs, as great as he was all last year, he dropped that touchdown in the right side of the end zone that would have put Carolina on top and salvaged their season. Unfortunately, that's what it seemed like it was happening every week. It's a 3-4 point game, and some big play has to happen in order for Carolina to seal the deal. So, Carolina will get an opportunity to go down to Atlanta, which obviously has a lot of good recruits down there, and showcase, get a little bit of revenge, if you will. And they need some revenge against Georgia Tech. Now, after that, we got the cupcake, okay? And there's no other way to call it. It's a cupcake. For the first time ever, UNC is going to be hosting the Campbell Fighting Camels out of Bowies Creek, North Carolina. So this is obviously one of those games where, and it actually fits in perfect when we go over the last 3 games of the schedule. It's almost perfect that it puts there because Carolina's got a tough 3 games, a tough final 3 games. Campbell and Carolina have never met on the gridiron. So this will be a good opportunity for some of the younger talent to get in if they haven't been able to get in throughout the year, and just kind of showcase what they have for the years to come. So we're not going to spend too much time on that because that should not be much of a football game. If it is, oh my goodness, we are in trouble. Now, this is where the season actually gets really good. And a lot of people might mock at this, but I'm telling you right now, and it pains me to say, Duke is a good football team. The Duke-Carolina game last year was in Durham, was actually a fantastic atmosphere. They did an outstanding job of making that environment like really good for television. I enjoyed watching that football game. And it was a hard-fought battle. Carolina ended up getting the W on Will Hardy's game-saving tip drill interception. And so that was an exciting football game. And Duke won 9 games last year. You know, and Elko has really got them playing good football. And they have a ton of their starters back. This is like almost the same football team. Okay, so these guys are going to grow together. This is not going to be an easy victory. And, you know, Carolina's got to be real careful, and I'm sure they won't. I really hope they don't. They cannot look past the Duke Blue Devils to who they have next, and that is the Clemson Tigers in Death Valley. Now, obviously, I don't think that I need to preface it with anything more, you know, in that this is going to be going into the teeth of the tiger, if you will. I mean, not many people bode well in Death Valley, and Carolina has to go. They got to play Duke in a rivalry game. Then they go to Clemson in the second to last game of the season, and they have to play the Clemson Tigers, who have owned the ACC for the past decade. So Clemson leads the all-time series 39-19 with 1 tie, including last year. Carolina got hammered in the ACC championship game, and guess what? Me and my family were there to witness it, and it was terrible. But, you know, hopefully they can get a little bit of redemption or at least make this game competitive, because it's about time, with everything that Mac has said that we're trying to do here, it's about time that we at least are competitive with the Clemson Tigers. So this will be a really exciting game. I mean, does it get more exciting than, you know, in the ACC than going into Death Valley? I would say, obviously, that it doesn't. I mean, that's the cream of the crop. That's where you want to be. That's who you want to beat. And to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And Clemson is the champs. They have been for a while. Now, if that doesn't kind of get your motor going, Duke, and then in Death Valley against Clemson, well, now we get to play the team that we all love to hate, NC State, in Raleigh. And there needs to be a lot of fire going into this game, because NC State's beat us 2 years in a row. And last year, they won in 2 OT with a backup quarterback, you know, in Chapel Hill. Once again, just an inexcusable loss. Leary's hurt. You know, they're down to their second and third string quarterback, and the guy ends up getting a W in Carolina and 2 OT. So, you know, it's unbelievable. We cannot let that happen. It's time to go into Raleigh and handle business. Now, UNC leads the all-time series 68-38 with 6 ties. So we have dominated, little brother. It doesn't matter about the last game or two. We've dominated, little brother, and we need to continue that dominance, okay? Carolina is the premier football program in the state of North Carolina. I don't care what any NC State fan says. No Duke or Wake Forest fan is going to try to, attribute that to themselves, okay? Carolina is the standard in the state of North Carolina for football. And you know what? They got to show that, though. They got to show that. They've shown that in the all-time series lead, but you can't have NC State coming to Chapel Hill and get a W like that without returning the favor in Raleigh. And I'm not talking about winning in 2 OT. I'm talking about hammering them like they should have done last year in Chapel Hill. So that's going to round out our season preview for 2023. Hey, look, do me a favor, man. If you're a Tar Heel fan, if you're a college football fan, okay, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell because it's going to notify you every time that I make a video, especially when it's pertaining to the North Carolina Tar Heels. And by all means, leave a comment down in the comment section about this preview. How do you like this schedule setup? Do you think Mac Brown did a good job of hiding Campbell right there before the schedule gets kind of tough? Do you like the 3 out-of-conference games that he scheduled? You got an SEC team, you got an in-state rival, if you will, and then you also got a Big Ten team. Obviously, you put that cupcake somewhere down there. How do you like that schedule setup? Because I'm really interested to see what you guys think. You see a lot of schools play 2 or 3 cupcake schools so that they can get those W's out of the way. Makes the coaches look good. Hey, we're winning football games. But I think that the way that this schedule sets up, if Carolina can handle business against South Carolina in the first game of the season, man, look out. It might be a season to remember. So, like I said, like, share, subscribe. Stay tuned. I'm definitely going to be putting out my 2023 season prediction video here very soon. But at the end of the day, it's always better when you're a Tar Heel. So, go Tar Heels, go. I'm out.